you're going to see a lot of similarities with fence books. And at the end of the day, right toward the end, I developed it with the same colors formatting because it's just my standard branding. It's how I do everything. And one thing you'll notice pretty quick is, especially after using it for a little bit, is I choose neutral colors. So if you're staring at it for 30 minutes or all day, it ain't gonna bug your eyes, right? So it's just soft grays, soft colors. It's intent, it's in purposeful. Um, so what I'll do is I'll kind of just go through left to right. So one thing I do with all my tools is I do flow charts, and it's a lot. And actually, I did this for fence books, and it's like 2 or 3 little slides that look like that show all the linkages, and it's in a PDF that I built and I gave to Sean. But and it just shows high level, high information flows through the entire workbook, and it's more complicated than it looks. Any of these little menus here are just basically drop down selection tools, or where you can choose things and stuff that's built in. Um, and with this tool, this is the first that I've done at this level of integration. So I build really simple templates for, the average user to use, right? So I try not to make things too complicated. So this is the highest level of integration. So I've had to think about how I would try to explain it the best I could. So first time user, I've got your fence book. I went through it, but a guy that's just him and maybe 1 or 2 other guys just starting out, they haven't gotten that far. They're not familiar with fence books or fence matrix or, a lot of the tools that you guys are using. So they're, you know, from a start to finish, this is all new, especially overhead and labor management and all the calcs, right? Um, so these are just flow charts to walk you through how I recommend you use it. And then kind of first time you ever set it up. The good news is there's a lot of information already in here that's kind of pre-populated. Um, there's a password tab, so I didn't lock fence books, um, but it's designed to all of it's formatted. So if you type in a passcode, everything that should be locked is locked, and um, everything that it's either the white or beige you can enter without unlocking the sheet. Fence books is the same way. I just haven't locked it, but it's formatted to do so. And then this is fence books has this tool too, so it's an access code. So as an example, if I go to I'll I'll go to wood job and I'll look at one of the ones examples I have in here. So job 4, let's do a different one. Hold on. I think job 1 might be a wood job. So wood privacy. So you'll see the current access up here to the right screen. So depending on who's looking at your file, if you got depending on how your crew's set up, but let's say you got a field guy and you don't want to see all your financials, right? That pull into the sheet. So if I go back to that current access and I just take that out, I just delete that code, that number. So that'd be a number that you would have as the owner, nobody else. Then it still spits out the job price as they build the job, but all the financials are hidden, right? And the fence books is the same way. So all the financial important details completely hide when you go through that passcode setup. So just a note, you'll know that before anybody else probably.
Okay.
So I can go back to current access, and you got to remember the code. You got to write them down because you know, they're set to what they are. Now, fence books, I came up with a clever way to, you guys could edit a couple of them and change the codes as you needed to. But there's a third, like a level 3, that you can't change. It's built into the formatting. So, but anyway, so as you populate jobs, you're going to get a revenue versus profit. So I'm going to try to explain this the best I can as I go through here. So let me go right to a job as an example. I'll go right back to that that wood job. So you got customer info to top left. So imagine you open up a sheet and you want to build a new price. It's basically top down flow. All right. So I'm going to start on the left. I'm going to populate the customer info. I'm going to pull in my labor details, which I'll go back to the labor tab and walk through that. I'm going to build my fence. So there's vertical pickets or boards. What's my section length? So the 8 foot or the 6 foot, whatever you guys do. Fencing height. Is it a 5 foot? Is it a 6 foot fence? Is it an 8 foot fence? And what you're going to get is, and then you set your side lengths, and I can zoom in so you can see that a little better. So what you're going to get is it's going to auto populate how many sections, how many posts, supports. So in this case, for supports means if I'm running vertical pickets by supports or horizontal, this is rails, right? Then your pickets, if you got finished, so if you're doing like a board cap and trim and you got finished pieces, that's what this, so you got up to 3 different finished, maybe you got the post caps or something else, and you can populate what those are. And then for every material, so this is going to determine how many posts I need for per side, right? So I populate my sides. And then I've got a multiplier in here. So I'm assuming I've got a little bit of roundup, but let's say you want to have some buffer on your material. So instead of 100, you just say 120%. I want 20% buffer on my material. And then that's going to populate down here into exactly what materials you need on account. And then that's going to pull into the pull sheet, which I'll walk you through in a second. But what you get is on the revenue piece, so you get a target due date for the job, which you decide. So when am I going to do the job? You'll complete it. So you got 4 stages of, I'm in estimate. So I'm just creating an estimate. The job is scheduled. I want it on the calendar. I've invoiced the customer. I've completed the job. And as you go through those stages, I'll give you an example. So if I take that out, I'll go to estimate. So estimate, you see that went back white, right? Not pink. So if I'm just an estimate, I don't have a due date. I don't need a due date. But all this plays into the calendar, the rest of the tool. So as soon as I say, okay, look, I'm scheduling it, well, in order for it to pull in the calendar, I'm telling, hey, you got to have a date that you're planning on doing the job.
Got it.
And then the same for the price. So you got some flags in here for actual price and install. So I'm going to jump back to the dash. Let me see if I can undo that real quick. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. I just want to walk through this one piece is the actual price the customer charged. So what you charge the actual customer and the installation date, go back to, let's see, job summary, dashboard. So it plays in your revenue versus profit. So then by month, you can see what your base cost was and what your profit was. So your total revenue, total profit, and then what your labor spend was by month and materials by month. And we'll go back. I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but just kind of bear with me. So overhead, this is way simpler than fence books, right? Fence books completely breaks down, fence matrix completely breaks down your overall business spend. But the nice piece, I'd say complementary in this case, is you be able to just take the total value and plug it in here, depending on how you want to do it. Because that's all it's going to do is say, okay, look, my total annual estimated jobs. How many jobs you do a year? I don't remember what it was in your book.
I want to say around 120.
Okay, so perfect. All right, so this dashboard was set up to handle 150. Basically, every time you create a job, it's a new tab, right? So you have the estimate history and the invoice history, all that piece. So it'll hold 150. It'll technically probably hold more than that, but the file would get a little busy, get kind of busy. But you could do a new file every quarter. It's not going to make a huge difference, right? But the nice piece is, let's say you plugged in your total overhead, whatever that value was, and I plug in 120, then it's going to say my overhead allocation per job that I do should be around 300 bucks in this case. So I got 105 jobs and I got a small, I get $3,000 a year or something for overhead. But that number would get much bigger. And if I go back to job summary, I'll go to final. I got lots of shortcuts, so it's going to bounce around. So if I'm going to zoom up here. So in this right over here, you get your base costs let me use the actual wood job example I had in here because that'll make more sense. So you'll see your base cost was $4,600. So that's your, it's a job pricing detail. So my material total, what I have selected is 2,400. I've got a material tax that I'm adding is 8%. So there's your materials tax. My overhead allocation is $81 in this case. That's what's pulling into the job, I guess, all your overhead. And then I've got installation labor, which is based on my installation setup up here. So I picked wood privacy. You got a soil and contour multiplier. So if I go back to, let's see, my labor rate. So when you build so current fence installation speeds and rates, you got it, removal speeds and installation speeds. So imagine the way I explain this best is almost like a time study, but imagine you're out there just one day with your crew and you're just kind of watching them. It ain't got to be perfect. You're just trying to get around about, okay, I've got 4 guys working on the fence. They knocked out 25 sections. They're 8-foot sections. So total hours for that was 16 total hours, and it's going to end up giving me a labor cost per 2 feet of installation. And that's for wood privacy, and you got it for all your different fence types. And that's removal and installation. So now when I'm building my price for my job, I select what kind of fence I'm putting in, what kind of fence I might be taking out. And then I've got a multiplier in here to say, okay, look, I'm pulling out of clay versus sand. This might be more difficult. Or I got rock, bedrock, whatever the case is, or somehow you're drilling through concrete somewhere. So you can put a multiplier in, and that you get an hourly labor rate, which comes right out of your labor details, which we'll go back to. And then you got man hours required per 2 feet. So you get a labor total and a labor installation on hours. And that's based on your information you put on how long your crew is normally take to do the jobs. So then your installation labor is 1900. You're not removable on this job. So if I go back up and look at to the top left here, removal feet, see it's set to 0. So if I were to change that and say, okay, I'm pulling out 100 feet, that'll populate down here now and say, okay, I'm removal. I got 8 hours worth of removal to pull that other fence out. And then it'll pull up over here. So then it should pull up. Let me think about something. Why is it not pulling in? I'll double check that. It should. I wonder if it's because I got price lock in here. No, I got something else. So I'll come back and check that. There's might be another input. It's been a while since I've touched this. So, so you got your job base cost, then your material margin. So, man, I'm bouncing around a lot. I hope I'm not driving you crazy. So on the dashboard, you can set a % profit margin and a material margin. So material margin is all your materials I'm adding, in this case, 35% on all my material costs. And then profit margin, I've got built-in notes. So this is added to labor and overhead for every job. So then your total, let's go back, is you've got installation labor, removal labor, your material margin, your profit % margin gets added on top. So your base cost in this case was the 4,200, 4,602. And with profit material, you're charging 68. So what you would be able to do is when you actually generate the estimate, anywhere close to the 68, you're going to have plenty of profit. You're carrying plenty of profit within the job. As long as you're anywhere over the 4,602, you've covered your cost as a business period. So anything over that is, fluff for you and the business. The price locks, what these values are, you'll see them. I got them plugged in. Oh, I see what it was. I knew I wasn't crazy. So if I take 100 over here, so the 100 feet, so the removal labor comes in. So if I take this out, that should populate. So I'll explain what that is. So let me take that back to I'll do undo. The reason I have a price lock, God knows, is your underlying material costs pull in automatically from your inventory material setup. So all of it's linked. So today a fence post might be $6, tomorrow it might be $8. And because this is all auto-linked, if you go in later and update that material price so your new jobs are accurate for the materials, it rolls through the entire workbook. So what these price lock values does is once you've charged the customer, you can come in and plug in. So this value here, material total, I just plug it in, and it just prevents this job price total in your history from ever changing. See, because everything flows in. So because even your installation, you're going to come in and at some point as you add to your crew, so if I go to labor rate, you got your current crew details. This is similar to fence books. You got your roles, your head count, your hourly rates, right? And it's going to give you your average hourly rate. So base rate per man hour, $27.50 in this case. I got a workman's comp add-on for 8%. So this is what you're charging the customer. And then, so if this changes over time, you don't want it to impact all your job history. So that rate lock just kind of locks those values in so it doesn't change and you've got the previous value set up. And then, so in your job summary, So for any given job, I've got it's everything kind of rolls into the system. So this is your this is kind of like your hub. So you can look at any jobs you've got. If you want to go back and look at history, hey, this was my customer name. I did that job for Kevin. It's scheduled. I got a John, I did a thing for John. It's just an estimate. He may come back and decide he wants the job later. So there's built-in status tracking all the way through. It's all color coded. And then when you get to, let's see, let's do one. So I'll do the customer invoice. So these tools, the pull sheet and the customer invoice are actually pretty nice. So the setup is it's a one-stop shop, right? You're not going to generate 100 invoices. You'll never need to. So you're not going to have 100 tabs for this. So I just go in and select the job. So if I go to job 4, it's going to pull in and say this is Linwood Drive. It's aluminum, 6-foot, black, no removal. And it says customer estimate because it must be in an estimate state. So if I go to that job 1 where that wood job was completed, now it says customer invoice. So I just switched, and now I just pulled in 100 Linwood Drive. It's a picket fence, treated pine, no removal. So I didn't say that. So when you're in these job tabs, as you build out your job, your title up here completely changes. So if it's a chain link, it's going to say chain link. If you change it to 8-foot, it's going to say an 8-foot fence. If it's privacy or just a wood rail, it's going to say what kind of fence it is based on. So if I change this to say horizontal coverage, that's now going to say horizontal coverage up top. And that makes it nice. So when you print the invoices and send those to a customer, it's got all the details in the header exactly what you're sending them to. And then the same with the removal. So it says no removal. So if I plug in any value greater than a 0, so if I put in 1 foot, it's going to say with removal in the header. So you're charging, hey, look, that was part of the job as we pulled the whole fence out in those cases. And this is, so this is a wood fence setup. And another nice thing, and the reason I kind of say 150 jobs is you can come in and drop in a picture of what the finished product was. So you have the history if you want it. And this just adds to the file size. So technically a workbook can hold up to like 4 gigs, right? So it can be really, really large. You can have more jobs than what I've got listed. But I set it to 150. I set the table to 150. Just as you add pictures, it may or may not kind of make the file kind of large and slow. But now, so once you set up your job fencing details and fill this out, it's going to flow down to your material list, and you can just come through. And all this is drop-down selection, and it's searchable. So let's say a finished material, I'll just say pine, and it's going to be all my materials in my wood inventory that I carry. It's going to give me a list, and I can choose from any one of those. And it's the same for every one drop-down. So I've got it categorized to post, concrete, vertical supports, picket coverage, finished materials, hinges, fasteners, etc. And if I go what that inventory tab actually looks like, so wood inventory, not wood material, sorry. This is actually a pretty nice setup too. So there's a ton of stuff I've already listed in here, just pre-filled out. If it's got a date on it, that's an accurate date I pulled some values out of Lowe's, right? I went on Lowe's and pulled some lumber values. So the ones in pink mean there's no date assigned. So it means that price value for that line item hasn't been updated. So it just means it's a watch out. So what's nice is, so let's say 12/24. So I got to review material prices every 365 days. See that up top?
Yeah.
So 12/22 was, let's say, a few months ago. So if I were to change that to 60, all of them are going to go red. So what you can do is change this to whatever you want it to be, whether it's once a year or it's once every 6 months, to say, hey, look, I want to make sure I'm checking my prices every 180 days. And then when they go 180 days late, it flags them for you. It just says, hey, you might want to go check those. And then as you build the list, so you got a supplier name, a material category, so it's a post, a picket, gate frame. You can tag these however you want to. The details, size, specs, the lengths, whatever you want to put in the description. And then what pulls into the actual product tab or the job tab is a full material description as it compiles all these inputs and gives you one kind of nice, neat, clean name to follow. And then you got, as you build out your pricing, this is a count. So if you buy it in bundles of 100, you could plug in 100 and then put it what you pay for 100. If you buy 100 at a time, it's going to spit. It's still going to give you a cost per unit, and then this is your cost with the margin. Now, as you use materials, so this is just the material list. This is how you build your entire list. Now, let's say this is the material pull sheet. So let's say I generate a job estimate, get it scheduled, and I say, okay, I need to go pull these materials for the job for next week, or however you guys want to do it. So let's say this, in case this is job 1. So there's no prices. I don't put any prices on the pull sheets, and there's no prices on the estimates and invoices. Customer don't need to know that. They just need to see what you're charging them for on materials. So it's kind of a nice, neat layout. And then it gives them the count. So you print this pull sheet, and you've got the estimated account based on what the job requires. You can have an actual count. So let's say I'll come back to the actual count. I'll explain this in a second, actually. And then you've got pulled, so the crew can note what they actually pulled from warehouse if you've got inventory. And then after the job, if they returned anything. And then this can be turned into any type of admin or person you have on your staff. And what they do is they take the sheet and they go back to the wood inventory tracker. So what they do is add a date that I receive inventory or I used it, what that inventory was. It's going to pull from the same, your same list. Everything's going to match up. What the quantity used was, and then it's going to spit out your total cost and your running inventory value and cumulative values. And this feeds back into the wood material tab. So over to the right. So for every line item in here, if I've got any inventory entries whatsoever, it's going to show you your current inventory value. So for treated pine 4x4s, you got $3,800 and $650 in stock. So as you pull and add, these numbers automatically update. So anytime you're looking at your material list, you can quickly see, okay, look, these are my inventory values. And the same for within the wood inventory tab for all products. It's going to show you your total dollar amount you got on hand, and total dollar you've received and total dollar used, right? So for material usage. And if I go back to my dashboard, that plays into this material usage by month, right? So you can see as you're using materials within each job, you can kind of see how much your material flowing in and out of the month. So if you do manage inventory, it gives you some insight as, okay, I need to carry more, I need to carry less, right? This thing does a lot. And that's wood. Same exact setup for vinyl, same setup for chain link, and same setup for aluminum, and then aluminum inventories here. And again, customer invoice. So there's only a count. There's no dollar amount in here. So for the invoice, you can have a discount value in here. So it could be 0, it could be nothing. So your materials and labor. So this isn't your base cost. This is your cost with your margin that pulls in. And say, hey, look, I'm going to give you 5% off. We busted a gas line yesterday. Give them a break. I've seen people posting that they've been doing that. So, and then you plug in your job completed date, and you just email it to them. Say, here's your invoice. Right. And flipping through them is just as easy as picking the next job. So job 7 doesn't exist, so it kicked it out and gave me an error. But any one that you've already created for. So now getting to that, this is actually nice. So let's say I'm in my, I'll go to my job summary. So right now I've only got 4 jobs in the entire system. And I want to create, okay, look, I'm about to create an estimate you can do this several different ways. Depends on how you want to manage it, whether you want to have the history and CRM information, or you just want to generate new estimates and kind of pre-populate them and just delete them and kind of do it over and over. But let's assume you want the history. So I'll go to wood job, and that's going to take me to my wood job template. So there's nothing in here. And watch how this works. So if I just hit, so I'm going to hit move or copy. I'll create a copy. I'll drop it down here close to the other tab. And I'm just going to rename it J5. That's all I have to do. And if I go back to my job summary, J5 is now pulled in. So as you populate information in that, it's going to pull into your table. It pulls into your revenue. It pulls into everything. So all you have to do is make a copy of the template and rename it, and it links up. Um, so really fast as far as trying to generate an estimate. And what's neat is if you were to take your templates and say, because they're empty, right? I don't have any information in them whatsoever. But you could take your most common materials you use for posts, concrete. You could pre-fill several pieces of information out, and then save that as your template. And then every time you go to generate a new estimate, it's only a couple of inputs to complete the job estimate and be able to provide a value to the customer. So you could do it pretty quick and on the fly. That's my thought process with how it's set up. But,
Okay.
and I think that's generally it. Oh, the calendar. So as you plug in those dates, this is really similar to the fence. Actually, fence books is significantly. I modeled the fence books calendars based on this setup. But how this generally works is once I schedule a job, so like these say February, and it's probably not going to pull anything in because I don't have anything set for March. But if I pull March in and I've got jobs set for March, it's going to populate the date and the customer and throw it in this calendar. So it's not as much detail as that is in fence books, but it's enough detail that you could because this calendar is set to print, right? So if I zoom out, it'll print 8.5 by 11. So you could, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. You could select your month and just print it out, and you got your customer name, and then go back to your job summary, and you'll know exactly what that address is, and it kind of ties, and it's nice, just a nice visual to kind of help manage jobs through the week, or in this case, through the month.
One thing on this, so it's got Mike. Mike's the customer. You've got the date as the 2/5. It's set for
Yep.
5 days.
No, the day is just that's a trigger value, so I know where to put it in the calendar. So that
Okay.
5 there it's not a 5-day job. It just means it's my little kind of hidden value to tie it to the day of the month. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, that's all it is. So I don't have that's not in here. So if you had to know, let's see here. Yeah, I've got no calculations. I don't think I do. It's technically there because it pulls in and it counts on how it's going to tell you your total installation man hours is 64. So that's, doing quick math, that's 4 guys at 16 hours apiece. So that's 4 guys in 2 days, right? I think that math's right. But I don't have I technically could. That'd be pretty easy to do is say, the thing is I'd have to know what your typical crew is in that case to do the math, but it would spit out how many days you need to do the job. So I don't have that built in here. Now Fence Books does, of course, with a ton of detail. But I built this before I knew anything about Fence Books, and there's some overlap, and I think there's some complementary. But this is pretty simple, right? This is meant to be much simpler.
Be able to walk the wood job, vinyl job, chain link, aluminum, and then you've got the J5, J4, J3. Those are templates of a wood job or a vinyl job, or
Yeah. So 2 is in this case is yeah. So these are the exact. Okay, that's a good question. So the wood job template is specific to wood, right? They're not the same. Everything's identical outside of the fencing job detail setup, and then your material selection table is going to be slightly different for each, right? So vinyl job, same footprint, but it's slightly different setup. You don't have all it's just less information. Chain link, I think, is even less. But you've got more material stuff that you got to select for chain link, right? And then aluminum jobs, I think it's similar to chain link, but you've got more material stuff to select from. And it's not, so again, the footprint's the same, it'll flow the same, but it requires different inputs. As an example, chain link, if I zoom in, your key inputs are, is it galvanized or is it black? Your section lengths, what's your rail lengths? Typically that's 21 feet, I think, that you guys use. I did make that editable, but I think it's generally 21 feet. Your mesh rolls. So this is going to tell me how many mesh rolls you need. So I just spit out a value. Whether you buy them in 50-foot rolls or 100-foot, you could plug that in here and change it. And then you still got a material kind of a buffer and multiplier. And this is going to work the same. So if I plug in, I got a 100-foot side, that's 10 fence sections, given that I'm doing a 10-foot section. That's 10 posts, 4.8 rails, which it should be a round up, but so call it 5 rails, and then 2 mesh rolls to do that job. And those numbers are what's going to pull down here. So then when I come in and select my posts, which would be it'd probably be, let's see, post galvanized medium. So it gave me so this is a good example. It gave me a pink flag. So it works, but it's telling me I don't have a dollar value in for that post in my material list. So it flagged it in pink. So if you ever select a material and you don't have a dollar inputted for it, it's going to flag it and say, hey, you might want to go back and check your material list. So let me try a different one. So post, there you go, 2461. And so that's going to be my material base cost for that item is basically $246. And as I populate the sheet, all that rolls up into your material list.
And then I could basically save this for 4-foot tall black vinyl coated chain link, right?
Yeah, so if you go back to the top, section height, I can change that to a 4-foot. If you had 8-foot sections, and it's going to do the same. Yeah, so you got 13 sections across 100 feet now because I just changed the section length. So it's going to do all the math for you. Oh, I know why it's 4.8 rails is because it's 21 feet. That's why it's doing the math that way. So you'd round up and do 5, right?
Well, I guess my question is, without putting the measurement in, am I able to save the material? So I have all the material built out, and then my section width. So all I would have to do is put the measurements of each run in.
Yeah. So if you pre-populated this to what you standard used, and you come back in and just update your fence inputs, absolutely, it's going to spit everything out. So if you pre-populated the material list as in, part of your template that you had, you might want to check it just in case you have some fencing variations each time. But it would save you time for sure because you're not going to have to go through that list. Which again, if I know what I'm looking for, if I say, I bet gate post is probably an option. So gates, well, that's actually gates. So you're going to want post. Galvanized, post black. So there's a ton of information already in here.
Yeah.
But if I go to, gate type, so if I select, I can type in gate. And if I got standard gates design that are in my material list, it'll pull it in, you know. And then the same, so on that piece, actually corners, how many corners are in the fence setup, how many ends, and then how many gate doors. And gate doors is, if I got a 10-foot gate and it's a double door, that's 2 doors. And then it's going to spit out calculations for how many gates you need. So there's some things that I'm going to say it's like a probably 80-20 rule that this would cover, I think. So for like a chain link fence, but what I've done in those cases is in case there's a setup or design that I haven't accounted for in the build, in the model, right, is you've got other items that you can come in here and you can basically plot whatever you need to, and then you can type in the quantity, right? So if it's something out of the ordinary that doesn't fit the current model, if I need extra posts, that was a bad one because that one doesn't have a dollar value. Let's see if this one does. And let's say I need 25 of those. It's going to spit it out and still pull it in. But it gives, the user flexibility in case the model is missing something to kind of to fill in the gaps. And each one of those tabs has that. I think wood has a little less on no, it still has 5, but it still has 5 for other items and extras that'll allow you to pull into the table. Now here's the other, I'm going to zoom in here. So I'll show this as an example. It's hovering over the note. Oh, go back, I'll do this one. So if I look at, so I've got notes built in everywhere. So let me try to remember what it said. That's estimated use of numbers are auto-populated based on fencing details. Actual, okay. So let's say you do the job. This was estimated based on the model. okay, what it did to calcs based on the lengths. Now let's say you did the job and it took more or took less, and you want to update your estimate, your invoice before you send it to the final customer to reflect that. Well, rather than going and trying to play with calculations, you have an actual column for every material. So if I pulled 22 from the pull sheet, I had a little buffer and I pulled 22 and I used all 22. If I plug in 22, it's going to automatically overwrite the 20 and it's going to update my material price. Um, and the nice part of that is if you do use more than what it told you to use, not only do you can override it and and it corrects your thing for your final invoice for your customer, but now I know, okay, look, I was 10% over. So for now on, for post, based on this calculator, I'll just update this and say it at 110 and use that 110 as a standard. So I've always have enough buffer. So there's enough flexibility in here to always account, make sure you have enough material as you learn and use the tool. And then I'm hoping as people use it, if there's big gaps, they tell me and I'll update the math to be more accurate. But I think every crew is going to be different. So I kind of kept it pretty straightforward is if it's 100 feet, it's 10 posts if you're doing 10-foot sections. Because, your crew and somebody else's crew, their waste is going to be different. Their usage is going to be different. What you run into in the field, your suppliers might be different. So you might get bad quality and, you know what I mean? There's just a lot of variables. So, and I can't just assume all that. So I keep it pretty straightforward.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's pretty intense. I'm not gonna lie. It's everything rolled in. Um, I'd say the only thing on my end is going to be the calendar, just simply because it's just what I'm accustomed to.
Hmm.
I like to have a revenue goal that's based on what I need to perform at. So when I build my
Yeah.
schedule out, I can see with a quick glance, is this above or below my goal? What I got to hit?
Yeah. Have you looked at the fence books I sent you, it does have that, right? And it has a ton of detail in it. This is just job management, cut and dry. It's just to help, again, I didn't build it for multi-million dollar companies, right? I built it for guys that are kind of getting started and they got a crew and they're just trying to manage their monthly schedule, right? It's pretty
Yeah, and
straightforward.
this is
So
what that's what I like. I like the
yeah,
fact it just fits one page.
yeah,
That's it. I don't need to scroll around. So that's what I had tried to build on my end, with the same element of tracking the man hours, so I can get an average rate per the month, and that kind of man hours total, man hour production rate, sections. But I like what I'm seeing. You've mentioned 1750. That's the setup fee.
that's just that's just so what you get with that. So that price is the dashboard you see right now. That's what you get. So when you download the file and you've got this current setup and um, it's got the examples in here that are built in and it's got, the material list. And a lot of that was, there's a lot of time invested obviously in the system, but I'll to pre-populate some of the material list and kind of have that and have examples. Now I do have, if somebody bought it and wanted it and asked for, hey, do you have more examples or so I actually I'll pull one up. It's an archive. It's one of my backup files. It's just really busy, and I didn't want to somebody download a file. It's got 40 tabs in it, and they're like, holy crap. So I tried to cut it down to just kind of the bare minimum. But I have let's see, it should be in here under real estate. Um, Probably one of the early ones, wood fence dashboard. Nah, yeah, that would work. So if I pull this one up. So this is when I was initially in development. Um, so it doesn't have the chain link and all that stuff in it yet. I wasn't there. I was working through kind of one setup at a time and trying to build a model that worked for that was challenging, by the way, to build a model that works pretty close for chain link wood, vinyl. You know what I mean? That wasn't
Mhm.
easy. That took some work and a lot of moving stuff around. But what I did do is as I was testing this out, I got a wood rail fence in here as an example. So this is built for a wood rail fence. So you'll see like price is 755, and it's how many feet is this one? This you'll see this it looks a little different. It got rearranged. I moved some stuff around in the final model, but yeah, so it's 125 straight line wood rail, and that price may or may not be accurate based on I was still playing with the sheet, but so this is it's got 10 panels in it, or 10 or aluminum. I'm assuming it's probably aluminum sheets actually, liquid corrugated metal. So you got a little bit of finish around the edge, probably 2x2, right? The boxes the plates in, or the aluminum in. I did some chicken wire. There was one with some, or you want to call that cattle wire, or whichever type that is. But saying you're going to have, your base post, and then you got kind of rails, and then you got some finished trim that box it all in.
Cap and trim.
This cap and trim. You've got this was a fancy one, and I had it, and the model works, right? So I can take all these pieces, and for this example, you'll see I've got all 3 finished sections filled out, because it took all that, and then you populate what the finished material is for each one. So this fence, if it's I think this total fence length was 103 feet, and it was $4,000. I don't know if that sounds accurate or not. I think it's so. I'll be looking for that kind of feedback, but I do think this is going to be extremely accurate when it comes to pricing a fence. Extremely accurate. And matter of fact, as I was building this, I was learning pretty quick. Like, man, if you don't have all this detail in here, it's really easy to And I said it's 3,000 material. Sorry, that actual price was $7,800 for this fence. Yeah, it was just $4,000 in material just for this. For what was that length? 100 feet. Give it 103 feet, almost $4,000 in material alone.
I believe it, and then
Yeah.
I would even bid something like this. That's for the ninja down the road. I just want to get in, get out. I don't
You like
want.
you like
No.
the rail job, stuff like that, maybe?
I'll take
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. Okay. So that price was 125 foot. That's $2,000. That was what that would cost. Now the key with me is I was estimating labor rates and values. I took a guess. Again, I'm not an expert. I just built the damn tool. So again, I have some examples, but the model's a little different. But I guess the good news is, like shadow box, I designed it to work. So it works for all these different fence types. It'll fit them all. And so one other thing that I got kind of clever with, it took me a little bit to think about, is so you've got picket coverage. So I had to think about this a little bit, but so imagine you're doing shadow box versus just straight picket. So shadow box, you're overlap on opposite sides, right? So I might have a 6-inch picket, which I'd select on material. But if I'm shadow box and I'm overlap, I might actually only have, let's say, 4 inches of fence coverage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what this does is I can select my material as 6-inch pieces, but my actual coverage, if it's 4 inches, then my pickets I need is 168.
Yep.
So it's gonna
Say
so
one more on board.
yeah, so right, if you're doing board on board and got overlap, this allows you to account for that. And the opposite, right? So if you're doing like some little backyard picket for some chickens and they want them gapped up, they got spaces between, you're going to have more coverage instead of less. So it'd be a 3-inch picket, but I might actually got, let's say, 6 inches of coverage because I'm leaving a gap, 1.5 on each, or depends, maybe 4.5 inches of coverage, but it works. You just have to, and I've got that note in here, right? So in those cases, I've got examples of how that math works. But anyway, so back to the original question. So when somebody buys it, this is what they get. And my general rule of thumb with any of my tools is, if there's an issue, I'll fix it. I don't charge for fixing it. If you find bugs and I make updates or improvements to the file, I send you an updated file. I'll do that forever. There's no cost for that, because I do that with all my systems. I don't know if I run into a ton of bugs, but I always run into something where the customer will say, "Hey, can you make it do this?" Or, "Did you think about this?" I'm like, that's a good idea. I'll make it. That's an improvement. So and I roll it in. And generally, if you're managing your business with something like this, you're not going to want to change files a lot, right? But it might be something where I send you an update, and the next quarter you just kind of start using a new file. Maybe it's quarter, maybe it's once a year. Um,
Can you give me a PDF version of what the estimate looks like? Give me an example of that.
yeah, absolutely. So if I were to, yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. So how I would do that is you can do it multiple ways. You real familiar with Excel by chance?
I see. That's the other. I'm Google, man. I'm
Oh, Google
through
Sheets.
the spreadsheets.
So
I've
this,
only
I
been doing
think
it
this
for.
would actually be easier. I haven't integrated this into Google Sheets yet. I haven't played with it yet. It should work. There'll probably be some formatting and formulas and other things I would need to change to get it to work. Um, but see, Google doesn't like these odd, like see these boxes around the stuff. I do that
Yeah,
for organization. It helps the visual.
yeah.
Google Sheets doesn't like those. They're in the way, so you got to take them out. And then there's some other formatting things that would have to be cleaned up. But I figured it out for the other file. I'm sure I could figure it out for this. But if I'm customer invoice, you could print or email, right? So if I were just to go to file and do, I want to say it's save as. It's not. Hold on a second. File. I'm used to doing this, and I use I use a Mac at home, and I use a typical Microsoft at work. So the
Mhm.
setup's a little different. So um,
So the
I think
print,
it might just be print.
yeah, I think
And then you can print. I
that's
think you can print to PDF.
yeah.
I just got to remember how to do it. Um, print active sheet margins. Um, I know it's an option. I just don't remember how. Print to, feed from, layout, paper handling, printer info. Oh, right here, PDF. Save as PDF. Let's see if that works. So I'll just do that. I'll drop it on my desktop. Um, let's see. I'm gonna find my name. Desktop. Save. Let's see how that works. I hadn't done it. I do know it works. I got it sized to work, but let's see. Pull that up. Oh yeah. Oh, and it does have a spot you can drop in your logo. So when you send it every time, right? You just upload a picture into the sheet.
Yep.
Um, and then I didn't tell you that. So on just about every tab, I think it might not be every one, but it's pretty close. So if I go, let me pull that sheet back up for you. Let's go to job summary, dashboard. I got a lot of shortcuts. There's a lot of tabs, so I got shortcuts everywhere. Um, so it says your business name. So it's yours JHL. Is that right? Or is yours the
It's ideal.
ideal fence? Okay. If I plug in ideal fence, so it populates throughout the workbook to include the customer invoice. So when you send it, you got your name in the top right, and you do it the once, and it's always up there. But FYI, you go back to on this. So you're at a point where you have enough sales that this isn't as big a deal for you. Um, you're going to generally go through the way I have this workbook set up. You'd use one a year. Um, but if you didn't, so let's say you were doing half the sales or a quarter, and you're just growing. What this does is it's a 12-month trend. So if let's say I'm doing jobs over like a 2-year period. So I can set that. It says January 2025, but if I went back to, let's say June 6, so I'll type it in the way I got it, 06/24, 2024. I type it in right, 2024. See, it shifted everything over. So what this does is it just allows you to trend any 12-month period that's in your workbook. For you, it's for somebody like you that has that many jobs, it's going to be your year start to year end is probably all you'd ever do. But it does give you some flexibility to kind of just look at different periods and say, okay, look, where this does complement fence books a lot, I'd say, is if I go to job summary and look at base cost price. So, um, I've got wood jobs. You've got your different job types over to the left, but you've got your actual sale price, your net profit by job, total material, total labor, delivery date, and target due date. So when it comes to populating some of the information in fence books, I feel like this would probably actually help at the end of the year. But I don't know if you guys use any other software, or I don't know how you guys, some of you
I
guys even get some of the information that has to be populated in that thing.
I do, and that's what kind of triggered this idea. And when you shared this over to me, is I'm not a spreadsheet guy. Okay,
Mm.
so I'm new to spreadsheets. I've only been doing it for a couple of years now. I've got a couple that I've got built out. It works really well for me. Um, but it got me along the process because we are using CRMs, we are using other software systems to try to get what we need. We've got our sketch sheets, we got our CRMs,
What do you use for CRM, just out of curiosity?
Job Nimbus.
Job Nimbus. I think I've heard that name. I don't think I've ever looked at it or seen it, but I've heard the name.
It's really it was created for roofing, but they do
Oh,
have
okay.
you're able to integrate it into the fencing concept of things. And before that, I was using paper pen. Okay, so I got in there and I thought I still love Job Nimbus, but when I was seeing this, and then what I'm trying to get my mindset around is I need something with tangible value for Ideal Fence,
Hmm.
because I'm going to be opening up another facility in another area, and I need everything to I need something I own, is what I mean. So if I'm using Job Nimbus, I don't own any of the information I'm putting in.
Oh,
I don't
gotcha.
own the system that they have in place. If someone was to come in and purchase that company,
Oh,
well,
I see.
my
I see.
SOPs and my
Yeah,
standard operating procedures all going to be relevant upon an outside source.
I see.
I want something in house. I want to be able to create an SOP that comes with the company, and they're still going to be able to understand it. That's what I'm looking at.
So, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, you
This is
want a little
where
more control. Yeah. So one thing with this thing too, and you probably, I don't, you may have seen it on the website, may not have. Let's see, I'm gonna pull this up. And this probably has room for, all my stuff always has room for improvement. I'll always say that. But one thing I try to do, you said SOP. So I come from an engineering slash CI background. I know all about operating procedures, right? I'm assuming that's what you meant. Standard
yes.
operating procedure, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and especially for somebody that's coming into, in your case, right? You're not super familiar with Excel or using the tools. So it's very extremely, it's about as detailed as I feel like I could make it. So you had the PDFs that you probably saw, which go through a kind of level of detail of how it works. Um, but there's also, let me zoom out. That's a little bit big. So this is almost a step by step of going through the entire workbook and using it. And it's never going to cover everything. It's not perfect, but it has a ton of information. And if you're, it would get you through, I think, most of the setup between what's already pre-populated. Because I think this is in the neighborhood of, yeah, I don't know how many pages. So there's 49 steps, you know. So there's a ton of information in here. So, if somebody else is using it, this helps with training. This helps with whatever. And then I've got one video I've already posted online as I've done a demo. So, anytime I do like reviews, I'm saving the video so people have it as history of training material. So,
Well, what I'm currently using is a fraction of what this is, and I'm doing, Sean essentially gave me the idea of doing per section costs. So my overhead, and basically I'm just going off from the matrix, putting my overhead in. It's going to figure my cost of goods percentage. I'm using that as my margin, how to get my
yeah,
margin. So when I'm going through and figuring a section costs, I figure all my material, what my man hour production rate is, and then I roll all that together and, you know, divided by my cost of goods percentage, and then that has my overhead and net profit built in. So I have a baseline. I can't drop below
Yeah.
this number, right?
Yeah, this does
That's
the same thing, it just does it a little differently, I think.
differently.
Yeah.
That's essentially the concept of what I built my sheets. So I have a pull sheet, I've got a bid sheet, uh, and then I've got my production schedule. But they're not linked, they're not tied together, they don't talk to one another. Um, but I need it's I don't know what I'm doing. Essentially, I don't know what I'm
Well,
doing.
yeah, there's a lot, so
It's
it's
working
funny,
for me,
but
but I can't say it's enough to say I'm going to create a complete SOP over this. This is like a complete picture where I have
yeah.
my material pull sheet built into my bid sheet and my pull sheet, but they don't talk to one another. I'm not smart enough in the spreadsheets to get them to intertwine like you've got here, where everything is populated. I don't have the time to mess with it. That was the initial contact. Is like, well, would you look at what I got and see how you can make it better?
And
Well,
that's what Sean had done too. But when you said, hey, I kind of do this and this, I'm like, man, I might already have something that's pretty close to what you want, you know,
yeah, exactly.
within reason, right? So, but if it wasn't, I'd certainly take a look at what you had. But it's, you know,
From a calendar standpoint, I love the simplicity of it. I live in my production schedule, and my general manager, she lives in it because that's our goal. We got to hit our margin every month. And so we plug these jobs in that we're selling, and we don't go, we do, but we don't. If we have a job that sells and it's a large revenue project and we need that for the tail end of the month in order to hit that goal, well, I'm going to move some jobs around. I'm going to push this other job
mm,
out,
I
and I'm
see.
going to put this other job in so that way I can hit my goal, and then I'll worry about hitting my next month's goal. So I'm typically scheduling 2 months ahead. And
I
it gives
see.
me an idea of how I'm building my schedule out based on what revenue I'm able to generate with the jobs that are coming in. And so that's how I kind of calculate my production schedule. It's not just, this job sold before this one, so they come first. It's to the most part it is, but when it comes to a revenue, I have some flexibility to kind of switch things around.
No,
And
that makes sense. Makes
that's
sense.
the concept there. And I've got so accustomed to I pay attention to the matrix every quarter. I'll double check, run my P&Ls, double check percentages, make sure I'm on track. But from a weekly basis, I'm tracking my production schedule to kind of hit the goal that the matrix is
Did
putting out.
did you look at that matrix schedule at all in the file I sent, the
I
new
have
one?
I've been crammed. I've been swamped because I'm also coaching. I don't. There's just no time. That's where I'm at. I'm no damn time.
Yeah.
So I got I opened it, I looked through it, but not in great
It's
detail.
it's
Gotta be
all so
honest.
it's all automated now. So the entire calendar is automated. So you have
Oh
a
shit.
yeah. So it's not I mean I can pull it up real quick. I've got it. So
Well, the question
um
I didn't want to take too much of your time.
I'm
I
fine.
have a
I'm
lot of
fine.
interest in what I'm seeing. I feel this is really what I'm trying to look for because I need some ownership. I feel like it's not that I own the sheet, but I need something that comes with the business. And job
Yeah.
NIMS, they don't come with the business. You have to pay
Yeah.
for that every month. Uh, my complete SOP is written around that system, and I need a
Oh, I
different
see. Yeah.
system. So one other thing on this is that I'm purchasing 1750 is the setup that you've done in this, all the work that you've done as far as populating products. So I'm vinyl. I do a lot of vinyl fabrication, and therefore I have blanks that turn into several different components. Are you able to, or are there already uh, products in there for different types of vinyl, corners, ends, lines, different
So what
router rails.
so what I have in here for vinyl is probably not to the extent that you're using. It doesn't sound like. So I've got basic end posts, panels, fence caps. So it's pretty cut and dry for what the when I actually started looking at the vinyl fence to pre-populate this, it was not as cut or dry as wood,
No,
because there's so many different manufacturers, the types, whether
right.
it's 3 rail or 2 rail, or there's all kind of stuff. So I just did something real simple. But you would have it would take you a little while, I'm guessing, depending on how much information you
Well,
have.
not really. I mean, if I right now we're get all our inventory built out in QuickBooks, so just get that out on an Excel and copy and paste, right?
Yeah, generally speaking, however you populate it in here, it's going to populate into a material name. So, whether you have it broken out like I've got it broken out, or you do something simpler, it doesn't matter. It would work out the same. It's going to pull up in your material list, but
And then
I
as
did it this
far
way
as
because it makes it easy to filter through and search.
now, if I have a 5x5 and I'm going to router in for what we call a Madison, that was a blank that we have in inventory.
So I'd
So
probably do something like blank, and I'd probably count it, on a router. Actually, let's say 5x5,
yeah,
and I did a router called a Madison.
yeah,
What color? Say white, maybe
white.
white, and then there's your name, and it's that simple. And this is what's going to pull into your material list. So whatever details you put in is what pulls into your material.
And then
And then
category E is what gets pulled out of inventory. Because
so
that's
this
what I was
column here.
wondering is how to track the inventory. It's going to be
Oh,
put
so
in
the
blank
inventory
material,
piece. So I just created that name. So then if I go to my current inventory for vinyl, so that let's say you currently have a ton of inventory right now.
right?
So in order to get this to populate, what I would do is I'd go into my warehouse, I'd count and say, okay, I didn't receive it, but it's already there. I'm trying to update my inventory level. So I'm gonna say I just received a bunch of, I'll do a search. What was that? I'll say Madison. And then let's say you got 500 in there, and then whatever price you assign to it, and it's going to add into your inventory. It's that simple. Um, so once you add it to your material list, you can come in and add received items for whatever you have in inventory, and it'll populate. And then you can pull and use from that.
Yeah, essentially, I think that could work. It's just when I think the hiccup there would be on the pull sheet.
So,
Because
so
what
what do
I
you
would
mean?
what I'd have to do is I'd probably label these blank 5x5s in inventory because that's what they are. But then I have to run it through my machine and make that the component that I need in order to build the fence. So each,
Oh, well, yeah. So you can do that too. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. So you can do that two ways. Um, so how I would do that is I would have a blank that hasn't been routed.
got it,
And I'd just call it blank white. And then I would do another row that says blank Madison. And then when I'm going to my inventory, so let's say you go into your shop and you router a bunch of them, then I'm going to use a bunch of so I'll go back and change this. So if I'd say blank, so blank 5x5 white, in this case, I might use 50 of them. So if that was a 50, and then I'd say just add received, and I'd add the routed ones in here and put a 50. So I just basically within my own inventory, I converted 50 blank whites to 50 Madison's routed. You
and
see what I'm
then
saying?
yeah, I see what you're saying. And then on the pull sheet, it would pull up that we need a router of Madison.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whatever you have on the pull sheet. So the way the pull sheet works is based on what you put into the job. So when you do the job estimate, you pull in the router Madison's, and that's what's going to be in the pull sheet.
Yeah, that's cool shit, man.
Dude, I'm telling you, this was this was challenging. I probably worked on this from I don't know 6 weeks. I probably worked on this. to get this built? 6 to
This
8
would
weeks
take
or
me
better?
3 years, bro, and I still wouldn't be finished. I'm
It's
embarrassed to show you what I built. Shit.
well,
It's
everybody look, I don't build fences, so man, everybody's got their skill sets. You know,
100%,
yeah,
100%.
I don't do
Okay.
fences. If I build a fence, it may or may not work out the first time. I do okay on building things, honestly. I've kind of had a knack for
On
hands-on,
since
remodel my what's
one
that?
of several projects.
Yeah, so like when we moved into the house, I ripped out a wall and I dropped in a Douglas fir beam and put red cedar posts and opened the wall up huge. And I had to reroute a bunch of water and electrical move it over through the wall and up through the ceiling. And but I grew up doing it. It wasn't that. It took me a little while, but it wasn't that bad. I had to build in a temporary wall because it's a load bearing and it's right near a vault ceiling. But I
Wow.
imagine I could probably do a little piece of fence and it'd probably hold up all right. I don't think I could build a long one though. My back wouldn't tolerate it a whole lot. I can tell you that.
So I'm doing a lot of no dig. I think I'll probably have to add in some more product categories to suit what I need. I don't feel like that's too going to be too cumbersome because I do feel like I can probably copy paste off in another spreadsheet off from QuickBooks.
So on the note on that, so a note for that. So on like a no dig, if you're not doing concrete, so these are automatically populated to do
Yeah, dig set.
concrete. Yeah, but it's not a big deal. So like if I pull this out, the value goes to 0. So if you don't assign any material to concrete, then it's not going to put a dollar value to it.
Would I be
So
able to change the concrete to schedule 40 2.5?
you can do whatever concrete type you have in here. Oh, what is that? I don't know what is.
Well, it says concrete over there. I can just edit that, right? And just get rid of that and say that's I'll label that like steel foundation.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, yeah, you
Okay,
could. Yeah, you'd be able to. Yeah, it won't matter. Yeah, it won't make a difference. It's pulling from the whole list. So yeah,
got it.
it doesn't. Now does that math work out the same? What would
No,
have been
and I,
concrete is now.
we would have to change the format there because essentially it's one steel post for every post. I mean, whether it's a corner and line or a gate post,
Oh,
every
no,
post is steel.
that would still work out because your post is 35. So if you're doing,
Oh well,
um,
okay. Yeah, we
if
use
you
more than one bag of concrete.
you said what if?
No, I say we use more than one bag of concrete. So
Well, so de- depends on you. So I left it at one. Yeah, I hear you. I left it at one because then if you're 50 pound, they also come in 80-pound bags. So I'm like, the people using 280-pound. So what you would do in that case is you just override it and say, okay, look, I'm not using one for one. I'm using 70.
yeah.
That's how you would do that, and it would pull through. Um, Again, that's why I got that flexibility in there is for those exact reasons. Or yeah, that's how I'd do that.
Well, I'm excited to kind of show this to the general manager to see what her thoughts are on this, and then I appreciate your time bringing it to us. And I don't pay a lot of attention on Facebook, so I didn't see it when you posted it because I just try to keep my head down and do what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have
Yeah.
enough time. I don't have enough
Well,
time.
man,
I
to
don't know.
be honest, this is a new product for my business. And about the time that I had just finished it, so I haven't marketed it. I've done very little. I think I posted it on the Facebook group, and that's been it. Because as soon as I did, Sean basically kind of pulled me in the fence book. So I haven't. There was a short period where he reached out, and I was working on another project and some other product development, and then so I haven't touched it.
He has a
You
uh,
know,
he has a tendency to find these little niches, and then what he'll end up doing is just buying you out. That's what he ends up doing.
yeah,
He found a hammer. He lived breathed this hammer that he loved, and then he just bought it out. He's like, oh, I'll just buy your company. I'm just
well,
telling you. That's
I'm I'm
there's
definitely not I'm definitely not for sale right this second.